how tournaments start.
Yeah.
Beginning of a tournament, a lot of tournaments, you'll see what's called a shotgun start, where everybody has a hole assignment, and then you walk out to your hole, and then you'll hear the tournament director and everybody else on the course will yell 2 minutes. I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen it, it would be 2 minutes.
Heard of it.
So 2 minutes, and then, so once 2 minutes is called, then you can't throw any throws, you can't throw any practice putts, and the official rules of the PDGA are now in effect. Before 2 minutes is called, you're allowed to use tobacco products, you're allowed to...
You could pound a beer if you wanted to.
You're allowed to do some practice putting, you're allowed to take practice shots, you're allowed to throw extra shots. But once 2 minutes is called before a tournament starts, then the official rules of the tournament are in place now. And I've seen it happen where dudes will be putting just practice, because let's say I start on hole 9, so I'll be at hole 10's basket, just practice putting before the tournament starts. 2 minutes, keep practice putting, now it's a courtesy violation.
It's a long tail of those 2 tee pads. But anyway, but you'll see the 2 stakes that are up there. You have to be within those 2 stakes. I put those up specifically for a tournament and left them in for this exact reason. Now, if it's unclear or unmarked, I mean, it's kind of talk with your group, make a best decision, but generally a tournament director will have already addressed that by the time you're playing an event on something like that. So it's really about that. Now, if the tournament director says you can go to the left or the right of a tee pad, it's generally stated how far left and right of the tee pad, but I've also recently played an event where it wasn't quite clear, so I just stayed within reason. Because I played Vista del Camino tournament, and those tee pads suck. They're the slickest things in the world. It's like teeing on ice. And they said you could tee to the side. So I basically just took about a 2-foot window that was within reason of the box, and I clarified with the TD. I was like, what is within reason? They said, like, just keep it close. And I said, so 2 feet? Ask those questions. Lies from the drive itself. Anywhere on the teeing surface is a legal stance as long as no point of contact is off or ahead of the teeing surface. So any amount of run up, like I was using the other guys, like, so this carpet's the tee pad, and it's advantageous for me to be kind of on this corner of it. There's sometimes those standstills. When I release that disc, all my point of contacts have to be behind the lie and on legal playing. So like if I threw and this foot was off the tee pad, that's an illegal stance. But when I release the disc, if that back foot is off, once it's released, it's completely legal. The tee pad is the same way. If I'm throwing a standstill tee shot, because standing on that outside corner is a more advantageous line, when I release that disc, this back foot that would be off the tee pad cannot be connected to the ground. It has to be no contact, out of bounds, or off the playing surface. You can use up to the size of a junior disc. So the junior buzzes, the junior...
4.5 inches or something?
Yeah, 4.5 inches, and you can use as small as a Pico, which I can't remember the exact measurement on it, but if you've seen the Pico minis from Zing, it's larger than a quarter. It's more like
they fit on the top of the...
Yeah, they fit on like a soda can top size. So you have the option to mark or not mark. What you don't have the option to do is take your disc and mark it. At no point should you ever just be picking up your disc and putting it in a bag or a basket without some sort of mark.
I'm going to place my mini on an imaginary line that creates a T with your shoulders. And that's your line of play, the direction you're looking when you create a line.
Gotcha.
So you're going to be dead straight with the basket. I mean, if you're here, you don't got to sit there fuss with it too much. But over here, that's not okay.
Right. Yeah.
Over here, that's not okay. You want to be directly in line. You don't got to sit there for 10 minutes and bust out a ruler and a laser level, but you want to be in line, create a line, and that's the way. And then once you put this down, because you're technically allowed to play to the front nose edge of your disc.
You basically have, from the center of the disc, you have an 8-inch by 12-inch, almost a sheet of paper, a little longer, a little narrower, that your stance can be good in. Like this is a legal stance. This is a legal stance. This is not a legal stance. As soon as you extend past that line of your marker, you're now breaking it. So, it's just important to make sure that however you're choosing to mark, either by using the disc as it lies or using a mini marker, you're within your boundaries of that 8 by 12 window of it.
I opt to usually leave my disc down and not mark it, especially in the fairway when I have an upshot, because it gives you a bigger target so that you're not footfall down.
Yep.
Because
if you use the disc as the lie, you still have to maintain all those same rules behind the back point edge of your disc, as if a sheet of paper were behind that disc. So you want to make sure that it could be advantageous to you not to mark your lie because of how it's sitting. Like if there's a muddy area, if you were to mark your lie and right behind your disc is in mud, you can use the ability to mark or not mark your disc to your advantage on a hole. So like, how do I do that? So taking a couple, warm-ups and kind of understanding that's fun, your motion, like, I'm illegal. Right. So, all right, cool, now I'm perfectly legal. I'm within that square out of it. But you have to understand your throw, your form, in order to maintain legality. If you're ever in question or just having one of those rounds and nothing's going right, nothing wrong with standstills. In fact, more people need to learn how to throw standstill. All right, so the next thing that kind of ties with that is going to be stance. It's a really important piece because that is kind of part of the football aspect of it. When you release the disc from your hand, you cannot have a contact point beyond the edge of either the tee pad or the disc itself. All right, so Rob's favorite thing is jump putts, and so I'm not going to speak without step putts. But if I'm throwing, the disc has to be out of my hand before my next point of contact is here. And there's a lot of confusion too around like foot faults. Like, I may fall through, let go of the disc, and then kick my disc. But if the disc has already released my hand, I've already established my point of contact prior to kicking, whatever is in front of me. The more blatant one is when you're actually standing on the disc, and you see that on the Pro Tour. You've seen Ricky called on it on tournaments and whatnot. You have to make sure that your point of contact is behind your lie. So when you're straddling out of a bush, it's the same thing, right? You're looking at the basket, you have your point of lie, and a lot of people will turn to their card mates and go, am I good? Like just kind of as a confirmation that they believe they're fine. But I can't step out or whatever without the disc being out of my hand first. You have to release the disc before any point of contact comes in front of your actual stance or your lie itself. So no closer to the basket at that point.
And a question on stance real quick.
Yes.
So absolutely. Straddle putting.
Yep.
With that piece of paper, does your foot have to be in that paper, or is it kind of the center of your person?
You have to have one foot in that piece of paper.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So it
your
doesn't
other
matter.
foot, as long as it's behind your lie,
Yep.
like we said, that to make that T. So
Yep.
towards that, so you have that T. That's where you have to, and that's what he was talking about, like saying, "Am I good?" Because it's making sure that on that parallel plane,
Right.
or not parallel.
But even if your marker was in the center of your person,
Yeah,
like
you
your
can't
feet,
do-
You cannot straddle,
it
no.
has to be
Yeah,
behind.
you have to be. There has to be one point of contact within what's called your lie.
So a large solid obstacle, boulder is going to be like one of the most common ones, or a motor vehicle, I believe, is also used. But if a large solid obstacle prevents a player from taking a legal stance behind a marker disc or from marking a disc above or below the playing surface, they may mark a new lie immediately behind the obstacle and line of play.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual wording for that, and they bring up motor vehicle. A player may obtain relief from the following obstacles that are on or behind the lie: motor vehicles, harmful insects or animals, people, or any item or area designated by the tournament director. So if I'm a tournament director, and you'll see this at Bird's Nest tournaments, the rabbit brush. You can take, we don't want you playing from inside it. Parks are all about rabbit brush. Farringer's the same way. They won't let me put holes near a rabbit brush for the most part. But we say take optional relief immediately behind the bush to the first spot behind the bush that is not within the bush.
Means if this glass table is the bush,
it's right there as soon as it's.
immediately behind.
Yep, that's where you would be able to mark your lie, and it's no penalty when you
Not
have.
the meter.
Right.
Yeah, there's no penalty for that. It's just the relief that is given to you, and they specifically, motor vehicles being probably one of the most common ones. If I have a stick or something that impedes my lie and stance, I could take that and move it.
Okay.
If there's a log right here and I want to jump putt and I'm worried about my safety, you can't move that in front of your lie just because that's your intended lie.
It makes you change your shot.
Yeah. So you can move things that are within your lie and stance. And like if it's like a larger like rock or something, it's your duty to put it back. But
A run up or something, like let's say you have, you got your run up and there's like a little stick right here. It's not part of the course, it's just a dead little stick.
Yeah.
Totally allowed.
yeah, dead and unattached.
Dead and unattached.
Yeah.
But also, the other aspect of dead and unattached is, you'll see a lot of courses, they'll make like an island out of sticks or logs or something like that. And while technically it's dead and unattached, it's part of the course. So you can't move that kind of stuff.
A player must choose a stance that results in the least movement of any obstacle that is a permanent or integral part of the course. So a tree and a bush would be that. So
There's gonna be some branches that touch your shoulder and stuff,
Yeah.
but you're not allowed to like push a branch out of your way and then.
or even like back into it so you have a better lie. You need to enter it in a way, and it may be just that poking that foot there. And I mean,
Like if my arms are branches, he
Yeah.
can't like back
Yeah.
into them so they're like this.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to kind of the least amount of movement.
Right.
And so there's going to be contact as you're moving and throwing, and that's fine. But I can't hold that so that
Right.
that is there. You have to try to impede it as minimally as possible. Your release,
swing,
yeah.
Yeah.
then it is what it is.
Yeah.
But you can't like hold it out of your way and then.
Yep. But if I've seen a guy literally just snap a branch off because it was right in front of his putt, like, A, don't do that to trees anywhere. We need all the trees we can get on our courses. But B, you're causing yourself to get a stroke penalty if you're intentionally damaging the course. And multiple infractions can result in actual disqualification from an event. It's based on something I said about damaging the course. It's actually a 2-stroke penalty. It's not a 1-stroke penalty. I misspoke on that one. I want to talk about out of bounds. So, you know that you get up to a meter from an out of bounds standpoint, right? But you don't have to use that whole meter.
Right.
So sometimes it's more advantageous to only be a few feet from it. Maybe just like it feels a little better here. It's not as muddy. There's not a puddle.
Right.
You have within that meter to use.
Okay.
But also, if you go out of bounds on a throw, you can take on the line of play, again, your body to the basket, or if there's a mandatory, the mandatory is the line of play, then the basket's the line of play. You can go, like if you're out of bounds, take your relief as long as you want. So there robs a tree, and I'm just like, that's a really hard tree to get around how close I am. I went out of bounds. I can keep going on the line of play to go have a better,
All the way back to your last throw.
Oh, dang.
yeah. You can go all the way there.
So technically, that rule is you can also opt to do that as well. So so he goes out of bounds, and then now he like you said, he has all this stuff in his way. He can go back as far back to to where he last threw from, whether that's the tee pad or
Right.
where his last lie was in the fairway. He's allowed to go on that line of trajectory all the way back.
Yeah. You've already been penalized, so you're not getting double penalized. Like,
You're also allowed to electively do it with a penalty.
at any time.
I can get up to this stuff and I'm in bounds and I'm perfectly legal and I just have no shot and there's nothing. I can go back 25 feet if I want to get around this with a penalty shot.
Okay.
Yeah. And you always have the option to play your previous lie with penalty. There's no, you have to leave your disc out of bounds until a lie is established.
Yeah.
You just can't go grab your disc without your group seeing your line of play prior. I mean, there's some obvious, you're sitting right outside OB. It's different than in the water and you're trying to hook it back in real quick.
The only time you are allowed to use your disc as a marker is if you go out of bounds.
Okay.
So if I'm shooting and my disc goes and I'm just playing, this is the fairway and this black part is out of bounds and I go out of bounds right here. Now technically you're allowed to take a meter in. We'll get to that in a second. But so generally what people will do is they'll take just 3 steps, heel to toe like that. And that's the only time that you're allowed to put your disc back down as a mini.
At no point can you be releasing a disc with a point of contact in out of bounds. So let's say the restroom is the out of bounds area, and I've gone out of bounds and I'm now putting out at you. I can have my foot up. You can take up to a meter from your out of bounds area, perpendicular. So if I wanted to take a meter, it's about 3 feet. I can be here. Let's say that's not a good lie. That's a mud puddle or something right there. I can do that. I'm well within my right to be anywhere in that meter. But the thing is when I release that disc, I can't have a point of contact outside that is not out of bounds.
Inside of 33 feet, you're not allowed to step forward at all. You have to establish balance till the shot comes to rest.
Yep. So once
Even after your disc comes to rest in the basket, you have to maintain, because I've seen a lot of people that will putt their putt, and then as soon as it's in, they'll fall forward, and now that's a football.
Did they ever establish control? And at that point, it never looks as though control's been
Basically,
established.
you have to establish balance by either picking up your mini or do some sort of physical motion that signals that you are balanced behind your disc.
Yep.
So you can't. What I will see a lot of people do is, like I said, they'll make their putt, and then all that momentum that they have, they'll fall through like that, and then now that's a football.
You've got to make sure that there's no point of contact ahead of that disc
Right.
or mark, and you're not allowed to follow through.
Right.
Everywhere outside of 10 meter, you can, but when you release the disc, no point of contact can be ahead of your mark. We talked about step putting in the last section. If I'm at 60 feet, I can be here, but the disc has to be out of my hands as soon as it hits the ground. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to prove. It's the hardest thing to prove.
One thing real quick before we get off stance and stuff, something I see a lot of AMs doing is just walking up and just picking up
Oh, yeah.
the disc and just putting it. That's cool in the casual round, but in a sanctioned event, now you
can't pick up that disc.
Yeah, now you don't have a lot.
Not unless you mark it.
Right.
Yeah.
You put a marker down fine, but you can't just, I see somebody just picking it up and boom.
Yeah.
And the disc must come to rest in the basket unsupported by your hand.
You can't just whack the chain
Yeah.
and give it one of those, and do one of those, you have to put it in.
Place it in there.
That's why you see the pros, they'll just go.
Like, you can't call yourself for a penalty any longer. Like, in order for a stance violation to be valid, I have to say that was a violation, and it needs to be seconded by another member.
I need to also second it.
Right.
Yeah, and at that point, the throw counts with a penalty. So it's a self-governing sport in that way, shape, or form. You're helping yourself by understanding where your legalness is. I mean, I've argued with people plenty, and I'm even the TD of the event they're arguing with it about. I'm just like, I know the rules, man. Like,
So
it could be.
technically, yes. Technically, that is a courtesy.
They're putting. Jennifer Allen was a huge. She would basically just lay up and then walk up and.
And I was like, isn't that like?
Yeah. So
But there's also the speed of play aspect of it. So if you're right there and they're still out, like there's within reason for PDJ has the speed of play rule. You can go and putt out. Like the etiquette is the person out goes. I mean, you saw Katrina and Paige on that really windy hole. Katrina was basically telling Paige, "You're up, you're going," and Paige was taking like kind of arguing like, "I think it's you," and they eventually went. But that's the Katrina Paige battle you'll always see forever. But yes, technically you could be called out for it. You could cite the speed of play and get away with it, which is why I guarantee nobody said anything to Jennifer Allen during the round. They're all taking their time to get up the putts and things that day. And you'll see that a lot in windy conditions like that.
courtesy violations, it's also not an immediate stroke.
There's a warning.
There's a courtesy violation, and then after that, it's a courtesy violation.
Then it's a stroke first. So, I mean, you can get a warning. A whole card can get a warning from an official, like for speed of play. I've had to get very close to that as a tournament director. So let me tell you the official PDGA rule for 2021. The tournament director has to provide you with two scoring methods. There's an official card, and then there's the unofficial card. You could use most tournaments are going to be using the PDGA digital scoring as your official scorecard. You log on to pdga.com/scores.
That'll probably be the normal going forward.
Bingo.
But it's also up to the individual tournament director.
Correct. But they have to provide a second option that somebody else is also keeping track on the card. It can be a paper card, can be a UDisc scorecard. In fact, the tournament I just ran, I did clarify with the PDGA that one of those options does not have to be paper. Now, the tournament director has to have paper scorecards on them just because you're dumb if you don't, and technology can fail, right? Happens. But there's going to be two cards for every group, some way, shape, or form, and you can double check on each other. Like the best way to do it, I mean, digital adds it all for you. So at the end of the round, for example, when I ran it with the UDisc and the PDGA, hey, I got Kyle for a 63, and then we'll call him Jeff. Jeff confirmed I got 63 on this card as well. Cool, we're done. Scorecard's done, we submit it, everything's in. But the tournament director will provide you with whatever the appropriate scoring options are for that. Has to be two methods so to the PDGA this year.
Make sure you're scoring correctly because it's a two-stroke violation if you don't.
If you
It
decide,
happened to me. I scored myself. I actually lost a bunch of strokes.
yep,
Because I thought I did worse than I did, and I actually did better, and then I ended off worse than I was in the first place.
I've penalized people because their score was wrong. They wrote a 66, they actually scored a 64, but they have no idea they got it wrong because the penalty is your correct score plus 2. Like that guy had no idea that he actually counted his card wrong that day, more than likely. With the digital submission, you enter your PDGA number or your last name to confirm the score. It's your job to be there until you see your card is submitted. Don't walk away until that. Don't be a victim of your own stubbornness.